So hey you guys, my name is Manik Madan. Welcome back to another video. Today we have Dr. Malke Asaad. He's a plastic surgery resident at UPMC in United States of America. And he has over 100 publications with more than 1,000 citations. Not only that, he's presented more than 80 presentations. And then like his H1 index on PubMed is 13, which is extraordinary. Say hi, Dr. Malke Asaad. How are you doing?
Hey everyone, thank you so much, Mike, for having me. I'm very excited to be with you on the video.
So let's start. So just talk to me about why do you feel research is so important in the USMLE process? Because you are somebody who's already done so much of research and you've had the benefits of it, and then you made it to plastic surgery, so you would know a lot about that. Just talk to me about that.
So actually, I have a very interesting journey through research, because when I started, I had zero research experience, literally zero. I remember my first case report that I wrote. It was during a rotation. I was passing by a patient with my physician, and he told me this is a very rare case. It would be interesting for a case report. That was enough for me to say, can I write it? He said, yeah, if you want to do that, you can do that. And I had no idea what is a case report, how it's done. So I went to one of the residents and I asked them, how can you write a case report? And they gave me a template. I worked on the case in 3 days. The paper was done. I remember I sent it to him at 2 a.m. in the morning. At 8 a.m., I came to the clinic. He threw the paper on my desk and he said, it's ready for submission. So I he asked me, just make these edits and it should be ready for submission. And that was the journey, like one case report, no idea about research. And we'll talk now about my whole research journey. But from that, I started realizing first how exciting research is. So when you ask how important is it for USMLE, I'm going to answer why it's important for the USMLE, but let's just cover very quickly why research is important in general. First, it gives you that excitement of you finding something new. One of our passions about medicine is treating patients, taking care of them, making a difference in their life. So imagine if you can do one project and you can impact patients worldwide, thousands of patients that you've never met, through a research or a finding that you can do yourself. So that excitement is unparalleled. You can never get this feeling outside research. That's one. Number two, advancing the field, definitely trying to make a difference in patients' lives. Number three, which some people do not get that very often, or you don't see this answer commonly, is that sometimes even if you don't want to do research, let's say you want just to practice clinical, take care of patients, it's extremely important to understand research so you can treat patients according to the best level evidence. So some people are not interested in research, but you must know how to do research in order to understand research studies. Because we'll talk now about good research and bad research. You'll find papers that are not good research, and you shouldn't be using it to apply medications or use treatments for patients that are not based on good research. So you understanding research is important for you to apply the best level evidence to your patients. And now we can talk about its role in the USMLE process. So for the USMLE, it's extremely important to have something that makes you stand out, because I see the IMGs think in the IMG mentality, good step one scores, and now it's going to be pass fail. So that factor is out now. Step two score, okay, you got 250s, 260s, that's fine. But what else? What can you bring to the table? What cards can you play in order to match? Previously, it was easy to come do electives. Now with the COVID and things are even getting more competitive, more complicated, I see rarely medical students coming to do electives before they graduate, because this is a requirement. You have to be a medical student in order to do an elective. Observership is not very ideal. You won't get much experience. So in my opinion, especially for competitive specialties, research is the door to establish connections, learn the culture, maybe get paid, and we'll talk about that now. So it's one of the easiest way to get in the system, build your connections, and improve your CV and make your application stand out. That's why, in my opinion, research in all specialties is important. It's not a must, so it doesn't mean you have to do research in order to match into internal medicine, but in some specialties, it's almost a must, like neurosurgery, plastic surgery, orthopedic surgery for international graduates. And now you'll be shocked to hear this. So many American applicants, US seniors in good medical schools, they're taking years off to do research and make their application more competitive.
Yeah, I have heard about that. I follow a lot of American grads on Instagram, and I see people are taking off a year to do a dermatology research elective, and for radiology they do that too. So yeah, now I'm getting to learn about that too.
And it's important not only to, so there are multiple check boxes you can have from research. That's the good thing about it. First is the research experience. This is a line on your CV for ERAS, research experience. And I talk about that in details in my ERAS CV video, how you can have your research experience as an experience, how you can add the publications and the presentations that came out of the research as extra lines. And finally, in that, in my opinion, is the most important thing, is the connection. Is that letter of recommendation you get from someone you worked with for 3 months, 6 months, a year, that's going to be very strong if you're a good applicant, of course, compared to a rotation in which you saw the attending 4, 5 times, they don't know you much. So the research gets you in a much closer connection to your mentor compared to the other stuff. So in my opinion, that connection you establish, and that's why American applicants do this mainly, not only for the publications, but for that type of connection to get good letters of recommendation, have people call for them during the interview process, and have them match in the program they want.
That's very interesting. Can we also talk about visas, like how research can help you actually achieve green card way faster than a normal applicant?
Yes, definitely. So I'm not a lawyer, so this is not a legal advice. I recommend reaching out to lawyers for that. But research is one of the ways that you can get something called national interest waiver. There is something called the EB1 visa. So national interest is the EB2. And if you have good enough research with number of publications, citations, it's like a list of criteria that you need to meet, you would be considered as your presence in the US would be considered in the national interest of the United States of America. So that's why if you are doing cutting edge research or research that would benefit patients in the US and around the world, that would be a way for you to get a green card.
And how much time does it take, like through the EB1 category, right? And or the O1 visa category, how much time does it take according to you for getting a green card through this?
So you have to put in mind that nothing is an easy process. It doesn't happen overnight. It might take months or sometimes years, depending on the center, depending on your application. They might ask you for things back and forth. So, but don't imagine that it's going to be less than a year. Sometimes some of the applications have a premium processing, so you pay more to get faster process. But definitely put in mind that this is going to be more than a year.
Yeah, but that's great. Like getting an EB1 in a year, like a green card in a year, is no small feat, right? So that's great.
Take more actually, and the thing is that people don't think about is that the time that you need to establish a CV good enough to get that green card or apply for it might take 3 to 4 years. So yes, if you have enough publications and citations, boom, you can apply. But the thing is, to get citations and get publications and get a paper published, it takes a lot of time. So if you're ready and you have your application, yeah, it might take maybe 2 years or 3 years. But if you need to establish that CV to apply for that category itself, it will take a lot of time.
What is the difference between a research experience versus individual research? Because a lot of people just don't know the difference. I did not know that when I started out on this journey. So can you please explain?
So research experience means that you work in an institution, in your medical school, in your, for example, residency in an institution in the US, and you get some type of experience, and you can check a box that on the ERAS CV, and you can talk about your experience there. For example, what type of projects you work on, what kind of publications or skills you got, what kind of responsibilities you have. So this would be considered as research experience. But if you're publishing papers on your own, in your house, writing systematic reviews, that would not be considered as a research experience, but your publications that you get from that would still go on your CV. But the research experience is experience that you learn through your presence in an institution.
So in shorter words, you work with a team that's dedicated to research, correct?
But even if you're working with a team at your home and you have a group of medical students, that would not be considered as a research experience. So you have to be kind of mentored by someone in an institution.
Right. Okay, I got that. And so let's talk about research experience, like how to get it, because you've done like so much research experience at the Mayo Clinic, and there's just so many other institutions you talk about. So can you talk about like how to get that research experience?
I get asked about the most. How do I get a research experience? And people think that it's an easy process, and my answer is going to be simple: go apply here and you'll get the position. If this is the way you're thinking, you're never going to get a research position. Finding a research position is harder than the match itself. Why? Because in the match, you know now, you apply, you get interviews, you interview, and you match. However, the research positions, there is no one place that has all these positions listed. There is no one place that you can apply and it distributes your application to programs and you get that. You get back the responses. You have to search for the positions. You might need to reach out to people. So I'm going to list this briefly in three sections. The first one is looking at places that you're interested in working in, and you go to their websites. Very simple. You go to the website and see the research section. Sometimes they don't have that. So that would not be an option. You go to section 2 that I'll talk about. But if they have an area that says, if you're interested in working with research, you can contact this person. So you write an email to this person, fill the criteria that they want you to do, or if there are no criteria, you can just send the email that I'll talk about now. So that's number one, looking at the websites of the institutions you're interested in working in. Number two, some society websites have links or listings for these type of jobs. For example, the APDS for general surgery, they have a listing of all the empty positions for general surgery residency. They have the empty positions for research fellowships, research assistants, all these type of stuff. So you can go to and find the society that relates to your specialty. I'm sure there is something like that for internal medicine, for pediatrics. There might be multiple, like not one, but multiple ones. So you need to do some research to find these society websites. And then you go and look at the posting of that job and contact the person that they list for the email. For plastic surgery, we have something called ACAPS, and they list all the research positions. However, and I'm saying however, these two ways that I talked about, the websites and the society websites, are not the best ones to look for research positions. Why? Because they don't always post these type of positions on their website. Some do. So for example, the Harvard Surgery Research Fellowship, they have like specific criteria, their interview, and I saw a tweet by the person responsible for that position the other day. They interviewed 150 people for few research positions. Like, can you imagine? It's more than a match for like applying.
It's harder than the match, yeah.
So it's crazy. But some actually have a formal process. They interview, they based on scores and research experience, so you can get a position. Why? Because these people build a reputation that their applicants match. Whoever they get, they match them because actually they're already good applicants to start with. So that's usually not the ideal because not all websites post these type of positions on their websites. So in this case, you need to go from, we call it through the window. So you need to look at the institutions that you're interested in working with and try to find mentors who you're interested in the area of research they do. So sometimes you see people who try to send random emails to random people who don't do any research. I'm interested in working at your lab. I actually got some emails. Can you imagine me, myself? I'm a first-year resident. People want to work in my lab and people want to work under my mentorship. I was like, I don't have any lab. I don't have any program to guide you people with this. So you need to research the person you're emailing before you actually email them. First, not to waste your time and not waste their time. So look at their PubMed, see their profile. Is that something you're interested in working with? Do they do research? And then write them an email. Even if they don't have a job posted, write them an email explaining who you are, why you're interested in working with them, and just a few lines about your skills and attach your CV. The problem that I feel people have when they send these emails, they send the same email to everyone. And I have a golden rule for interview preparation and for sending these emails. If this email can be applied or sent to someone else without them noticing the difference if you just change the name and the rest of the email can be applied to someone else, don't send this email. This is a bad email. Why? Because it's generic. It can apply to everyone by just changing the name. So your email should be literally to that person specifically and should not apply to someone else. So for example, if I'm writing an email to you, I should mention maybe your YouTube channel or video that you did and the course that you have. So it should be very specific to you. So if I send this email to me, it would not work because it has specific things that are only specific to you. So that's the mistake that you should avoid when you're sending these emails. And don't expect this to happen from the first email. Sometimes you might need to send 50 or 100 emails before you actually get a position. Why? Because sometimes people are busy and they don't have a position, but they don't have time to respond to you, or they forgot, or they just filled the position with someone. So continue sending emails, reminders. Don't burden people with reminders. Just send a few, and hopefully you will get a response afterwards. And you will ask me now about the if it's paid or not, and we can discuss how that plays a role in the response rate that you will get.
Can you, another question I had was, can you use things like LinkedIn to get research positions? Because people talk about LinkedIn a lot. Can you like elaborate on that?
I prefer to reach out through email, through their institutional email compared to LinkedIn. But if you couldn't find their institutional email, maybe try LinkedIn is better than nothing. But if you can find their email, definitely better to use email. Why? Because you have to realize most of these people don't even open their LinkedIn. Maybe they open it once in a month. It's not like something they check every day. Some people are active on LinkedIn. That might be a different story. But I think emails are the more professional way of reaching out, especially to doctors and surgeons.
So you did like so much of research experience. Did you pay anything for it? And can you talk about that, your own research experience? Because I understand that you have a 3-year experience in research. So can you just talk about like how much did you pay? Like what stuff did you go through in all of these 3 years? Like what happened?
Yeah, that's a very important question for people when they are applying for research, because research positions, usually you don't need to pay for the position. So it's not like a school you're going for an elective where you have to pay, or a medical school or a graduate degree. So you don't need to pay to get a research position. However, there is mainly two types of positions: those that are funded and those that are not funded. And by not funded, I mean you don't have to pay to get the position or be in that position, but you have to pay to support yourself living in that city. Because let's say you're living in New York City or in Baltimore or in Seattle, and they don't want you to pay anything for the position, but you still need to pay for rent, for food, for transportation, cell phones, all these things, and it might be very expensive for some people, especially in New York City. The cost of living there, I think a month might be $2 or $3 or maybe $4,000.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not, you're not paying for the position, but you're paying your own expenses, which might be ridiculously expensive. Other cities might be cheaper, might be $1,000 a month. But in my opinion, I think it's very hard to find any position or any city that rent plus food plus transportation plus everything else would be less than 1,000. So at least you should put in mind around $1,000, and that might go up depending on the city. So those are unfunded positions. So you don't pay for research, but you pay for your own expenses. But let's talk now about the funded positions. Let's talk about before I go into the funded positions, these unfunded positions have so many names. Sometimes research volunteer, research trainee, research whatever, but they either explain to you in the posting that there is no funding, or when you email someone, they tell you that there is no funding for that position. So that's regarding unfunded. For funded or supported research positions, generally they are either called research fellows, which are the most prestigious position for someone who's applying to residency or applying for fellowship. These are the best. It's better than research assistant and research coordinator, and we'll talk about that now. So research fellow is the best, and they have a set salary from the NIH. So they're more than enough for you to live. Sometimes you might be able even to save money from your research fellowship position. Research fellowships, usually to get, you need much more research experience. So that's the problem. But sometimes people ask for research fellowship, or they want a paid position, and they publish the case report from somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and they expect to get a paid research position. That will not happen. Usually, if you apply with minimal research experience, you should expect to find an unfunded position. To get a funded position, you need much more research experience, publications, or unique skill that not everyone have, and it would be worth paying for. Funded positions, they give you money. So you don't pay for the research position, but they give you money so you can support yourself living in New York and Seattle and Baltimore or wherever. So that salary that you get would be more than enough to support you living, unless you want to eat in the 5-star restaurants every day. But otherwise, it will be more than enough. So these are the main differences between research fellowships or funded positions and unfunded positions. The subcategory of funded positions are research assistant, research coordinator, and there is no one set definition for this type of positions, because a research assistant, might be a lower salary, but you might do the same things as a research fellow, or it might be somebody who's consenting patients, or you don't have much contact with physicians, which is not very helpful when you're applying for residency.
Okay. And so can you tell us about your story, like how you got into this? You had, like, from what I understand is you had one case report And what happened after that? Like, how did you reach this level of 100 publications and then 1,000 citations, 80 presentations? Like, how did that come to be? Like that 3-year journey? Can you just like dive deep into that?
Definitely. So for start talking, let's start by talking about the Mayo position. So the
Yeah.
Mayo position, I got it through email. I emailed physicians, and the one who responded to me became my mentor during my research experience at Mayo. So I didn't have much research experience there. I had this poor case report that I wrote, and that's it. But case reports are not considered research because it's one case. It's not generalizable knowledge. So if we want to be technical about this case report is not research. So I had zero research experience when I started. So how did I get to 100 publications? At the end of my year at the Mayo Clinic, I had almost 30 publications. During from zero to around 10 months or 1 year, I had 33, 34 publications. How I got into there? The secret is to be always there. Don't waste any time to get on the publication, help someone. So I was always there asking people, is there anything I can help with? Can you involve me on this project? And involvement doesn't mean just adding your name, it means actually working hard, it means always dedicating your time to learn, ask people around you. So I got a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge from the research fellows that were working with me. I used to ask them a lot of questions. My mentor, and there was a statistical course at the Mayo Clinic that I learned a lot from. Statistical consultations that I used to go to regularly, ask them questions about my projects. I learned a lot from. So you have to be a sponge. Take every opportunity to dive deep, get like the knowledge that you need to learn and apply it. And the harder you work, you would be afterwards the person to go to when people want to do research. If they want to do something and they know that you get things done easily, boom, let's go and talk to this person. He's known. He has a reputation now of getting things done. And this is very important research, because you'll find in research sometimes people start a project and it takes a year or two to get done. It's like, it's not good. You need to get things done very quickly, as accurate as possible, as soon as possible. And that was my logo when I was doing research, to get things done. And I used to work very hard from 8 till 5. I go for dinner for an hour or two and I continue back until 11 p.m. So it takes time, but the more you do, the more you start thinking about other ideas, and it's like a snowball effect. Afterwards, I reach out also at the end of around the midterm of my research experience at Mayo to other mentors, because I wanted to get funding and there was no funding for that position at Mayo. So I wanted money technically. And the position that I was offered was at MD Anderson. I got other offers from other institutions, but I picked the one at MD Anderson. And there were multiple reasons I picked that position, but it was the best decision I made because I was blessed to work with amazing people that became really, literally my family. I can say that the people at MD Anderson became my family. Now, whenever I see them, it's literally like meeting my mother and father, literally like that. They supported me to the limit. They gave me all the experiences I need. They were always available for me. And with their support, there was a statistician, there were medical students that were working with me, fellows, everyone, like a team. And we together worked to get this extra 60, 70 papers. So I got to 100.
So you worked at the Mayo Clinic, then MD Anderson Center. So like you worked at MD Anderson Center for about 2 years. Is that right? All
Yes.
right. And that was a paid position. So how much were you paid like per month so that like people can get an idea of?
Fellowship position is like a national salary. It's the same. It varies a little bit based on where you live to accommodate for the cost of the city, but generally it's around $50,000 a year. But then they
That's
cut
good.
taxes and stuff, but it would be more than enough to live.
Yeah, that's more than enough to live for somebody and work through it. Another thing I wanted to ask was we always talk about this gap, like that if you don't get into residency fast enough, you'll increase that gap from your graduation, YOG, right? What's your thought on that? Like with research and the year of graduation, because the more research you do, the more your year, like YOG increases, right? That distance. So what's
That's
your
a,
thought on that?
that's a very important question. And I think there is this sweet spot that it wouldn't affect if you add 1 or 2 years of research, but if it's too long, like 4 or 5 or 6 years, that's too much. So you need to find out where is your sweet spot. In my opinion, it's around 2 to 3 years is the sweet spot for research. For internal medicine, it might be 6 months to 2 years. So I think it varies based on the person, their credentials. That's why I do these individual advising sessions with people on when you should apply or what is the best timing, because there is no one single answer. But I think for every applicant, there is this sweet spot. So do you know this curve that if you do more, it increases, but then it decreases the chances
Gotcha.
of matching? I think this applies to residency here. Because if you do few months of research, 2 or 3, it's not going to help you because you won't get any publications from that. So it's maybe you establish some connections, but you won't have much things on your CV. If you work much more, you would get a lot of publications. And afterwards, okay, we have 50 papers or 60 or 70 or 80. It doesn't make a difference much because now people know that you have the experience, but now you're compromising your clinical experience by doing too much research. So I think you have to balance, and the decision should be individualized.
Got it. Another thing I wanted to ask you was, can you also elaborate the difference between good and bad research? Like, so if somebody's working on a project, how do they know if it's gonna be good on their CV? Like, what are the criteria for that? What's a high index journal? What's like PubMed indexing? All of that.
Yeah, this is an extremely important question, and so many medical students who do not know much about research struggle with, because they have no idea. It's like you're trying to buy a car and you don't know the difference between a Toyota and a Ferrari, or like Volvo or Mercedes. So you need to have a good experience about cars before you are able to make an informed decision about which one you need to buy. So, and I explain that in details in my research course on how to elaborate on the research projects, how to know which is a good one, which is a bad one, and people can check it out. We'll leave the link for that in the description and in the cards as well. But in summary, a good research would be something that is actually helpful. So if you do research and there is already 50 papers about that topic, doing an extra similar paper, it's not going to be much helpful. That's like a no-brainer that this paper won't be much of an impact or of use to the general public. So the type of study, or what are you trying to bring with this research project? Are you answering a question that we already know? For example, let's say somebody wanted to do a survey or a question about whether smoking increases the risk of lung cancer. Do you think that would be helpful? No. Why? Because we already know that smoking increases lung cancer. So if you do a study, although you actually follow the best guidelines to do a study, it's useless. Why? Because we already know the answer. If you do a study about the effect of COVID-19 on the medical attendance of medical students in small medical school in small country, would that be of help? No. Why? Nobody cares. That's simple. Nobody cares about attendance in a small school in a small country. If you're doing on the level of the world, the whole like world thing, oh yeah, okay, that might be more impactful. So something that is the topic of the question, that's the most important thing. Whether it's useful, somebody already done that, it's already an answered question or not, or it would be of interest for people to know. So that's the first thing, the topic. Number two is the study design. So if you write a case report, is not as useful as if you're writing a retrospective cohort study or a case control study
Correct.
and prospective randomized trial. So again, I can explain that in details in my research course, but the study design, what type of study are you doing? Surveys are better than case report, but actual clinical data is more important than surveys. So you know the pyramid with levels of evidence, randomized clinical trials and prospective
Try.
studies come first. These are hard to do, but I think retrospective studies, chart review studies would come afterwards, and then at the end would be case series and case reports. So study design. Number three, what type of journals are you aiming? And this is an important question that you asked. High index journal versus low index journal. And there are multiple factors that go into that. Whether the journal is PubMed indexed. That's the first thing that you should look for. Number two, whether the journal has an impact factor. Because being PubMed indexed is not enough. Some people, oh, I have a publication in Journal X and the journal is PubMed index, as if they have a publication in Nature or Science. That's not enough. Publishing in a PubMed index journal is not enough. You need to see what is the reputation of that journal. Is that a good journal? And how do you know that? You need to see the impact factor of that journal. And the impact factor is a calculation that measures the number of citations that the journal's papers got in the last 2 years over the number of citable items in the last 2 years. So it kind of measures how many times these articles published in this journal have been cited. Because if the articles in the journal are cited a lot, that means this journal is publishing good research, because people are talking about these things a lot. If nobody cares about the papers in this journal, that means it's not a high impact journal. So the impact factor, you can just simply impact factor of this journal and you can see the impact factor. The highest impact journal is New England Journal of Medicine. Don't expect to publish papers in New England Journal of Medicine at this point. Aim for lower impact journals, but journals that have an impact factor and it's field specific. For example, in plastic surgery, the highest impact journal is 4.2, 4.3, something like that. In surgery, in general surgery, it's like 10 point something. In internal medicine, it's much higher. So each field has its own unique impact factor. And you can also do a Google search, best journals in cardiology, and compare their impact factor. And based on that, you can target. So generally, applicants who publish good study designs, good research questions in good journals, that would leave a better impact on their CV. So usually people don't go and read the details of your research study when you're applying for residency until you get an interview, and they will start asking you about that. But the journal is the first thing that catches their attention. So if they see, for example, us in plastic surgery, PRS is the #1 journal. They don't look for Nature and Science at this level for us. They like, if there is something from PRS, they say, okay, yeah, this is the best journal in plastic surgery, and this person has multiple publications in that. So that's the easiest thing to do, to look at the journals of publication.
Okay, that's very helpful. I did not know about the index factor and like all of those things. It's very interesting. Now, can we talk about, okay, so how can somebody do research without a research position? Because I've heard of like you can just go online, look at case reports, and then do a meta-analysis on them, a systemic review on studies that have already been done, and you don't even need patients, right? And that's where your course comes in, where like if you can use that like course, you can learn from that, you can actually publish without even being in a clinic, like in a research position by your own. And even if you get into a research position, you would have enough knowledge to work in a research position because you have a course on research, statistics. So that's very interesting. Can you talk like first about, okay, let's say I don't get a research position. What can I do now? How can I publish, right, without any research position on my own?
I think the idea of publishing on their own might be overrated, because even though you can get a systematic review, you still need somebody to guide you with this. I think somebody who just started to do research and they want to publish a systematic review, you will see that, oh yeah, they feel excited, they start collecting studies, but then they get the shock of the rejection from the journal. Because this is the thing about systematic reviews, because they are because they can be done without having a big patients database, because you don't need an institution. People around the world are publishing them. So now it's actually very hard to publish good research and a systematic review. Why? Because people over the world are competing over this. You don't have to have like a big lab or a big patient database to do them. So people think it's easy to publish a systematic review, but it's the opposite way around. I think systematic reviews are one of the hardest to find a good topic, because the good topics are already taken. All these people that have good experience with systematic review, they just publish systematic reviews every day. So I think for somebody who's just starting, I don't think systematic review could be the first thing to start with. If there is a team, that might be a different story. If there is a team of people who are doing systematic reviews and they're experienced, and then they start helping with the systematic review, and next time they lead a systematic review under somebody's guidance, and third time they guide people, or they have a team of systematic review people, that's fine. But first study to do a systematic review and you're on your own, I don't think that's an ideal situation.
Okay, that's hard.
Yeah, I think the better situation would be, and this is the thing, some people have good ideas for research, but they don't know how to do research. And some people don't have good ideas about research, but they know how to do research. That's what my course comes and help with. Because most of my audience are either medical students somewhere, or residents somewhere, or just graduated from school. So they still have some connections to the school, or they're doing a research position, applying to residency. So that's why my course is helpful. And I want to make it very clear of what my course can help, because I don't want people just to get the course and then, oh, this is not helpful for me. The course helps for someone who wants to learn the experience, take an idea and make it a paper. So let's say I tell you, it's interesting now that patients with heart failure are getting more negative outcomes when they get COVID compared to those who don't get COVID. So why don't we study that? I just give you that idea, and you attended the course, you take that idea and make it a paper. That's what my course help with. It helps you kind of find out where you can find ideas, how to generate an idea. But I'm not going to give you ideas. Why? Because your field is different than mine. If I give you a list of ideas, I would do them myself and publish papers from them first. Second, it changes a lot. Like ideas for today might be published tomorrow, and these ideas are not helpful anymore. So my course does not give idea. It shows you how to find the ideas, which I think is more helpful. Or if you're working with someone in your hospital, in your clinic, these people might not have good research experience, but they're practicing medicine every day. They're finding challenges. They know what questions are not answered. So you can ask them for their feedback and see what thing could be a good idea. You can do the literature search that I explained in the course, and then you can find out, okay, this is something we can go forward with or not. So I think the ideas, even for me now, after publishing 100 papers, I still need sometimes guidance from my mentors on the idea wise. Why? Because they are practicing clinically. They know what the challenges in the OR. They know challenges on the patients. I just started residency. And for someone who's in med school, they barely know anything about clinical medicine here. We're talking about clinical medicine, not about research. Because remember, research is like adding a stone over the top of the pyramid. So you need to climb all the pyramid in order to know what you need to add. While those people already know clinical knowledge and they know the gaps in the knowledge. So that's why you can target that gap in knowledge with research. So the course would be helpful most to people who have some people around who are good clinically, have access to patient records, and they can take the projects from idea to publication. And you don't need to be a med student in the institution to do research there. You can reach out to your people who taught you certain subjects and tell them, I have research experience. Would you allow me to work on this project? You can have some medical students help you collect the data if you don't have access to the records. And then you can help with the analysis or help with writing the paper, guiding the project. For systematic reviews, I'm going to make actually a course about that in the next few months, because systematic reviews are not currently covered in the course. The course covers all the projects except systematic reviews, because they have a totally different study design. The way to think about the systematic review, go through the systematic review is different than a retrospective or prospective or randomized trial. So that's why I'm going to make a detailed course about that. But if you want to publish systematic reviews, again, you need the guidance of someone to give you the ideas, because just publishing a collection of case reports is not going to be enough. And by the way, sometimes it's hard to find these publications without certain access from the institutions. So that's why you need sometimes the access through these institutions, even to publish systematic review. To complicate some subjects, some topics, people think that things are easy and simple, and there is one simple answer for this. But once you actually do it, you see how things are complicated. Like in medicine, oh, doctor, my arm hurts. And we start asking all these questions. I'm like, it's just my arm hurting. Well, there's a billion diagnosis for this. Yeah. So that's why once you actually do something, you realize how it's complicated and it's not that simple.
It's like you have to learn it and then calibrate accordingly. And it's very creative. I think research itself is a very creative endeavor, and people don't understand that. Like even generating ideas is creative, right? So yeah, that's very...
this course would get people an insider practical view on what they need to learn in order to understand research and think like somebody who is experienced with research.
So guys, we're also doing a giveaway for Dr. Malke Asaad's research course, which has been incredibly helpful for me and a lot of other medical students. And we're doing 5 giveaways. So all you have to do is to enter the giveaway itself is just, like this video, and in the comments, just say, let's do research, and you'll be entered in for a giveaway. And we'll be announcing the results in like about 7 days from now, where I'll mention it in a story. And I'll also, in one of the comments, I'll just type it out that you are the winner. I'll also mention it in my story on YouTube, Instagram, and make a post about it so you guys just get notified about it. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to ask you was, okay, what are the ABCDs of research? Like, because there are research skills and then there are analysis skills. So what is the difference between that? And like, can you just take me through the ABCDs of research?
So there is a difference between research and stat. And I think the best researchers are those who are able to do stat. Do you remember how we said those who want to do research, it's even if those students or residents who do not want to do research, it's important for them to know how research is done, to understand papers. And I think the
Yeah.
same applies for statistical analysis. Because even if you don't want to do your statistical analysis, you have the luxury of having a statistician that works for you. Having that knowledge will help you think about the project differently, collect the data differently. You would be set apart from other people who do research. So in my opinion, although these are two different skills, designing a project and doing the statistical analysis are two different things, I think it's very valuable that you have the statistical analysis skills. So let's start with research. Research ABCDEs. So the first thing, and I always stress that in my course, the first thing that you need to do is the literature review, because you want to see what is out there. Are you adding something new? Is it something that already been discussed? Or is there something you can add to the research? So always, even if you're working with the leader of the field in that area, do literature search after you discuss project with them, because that's going to help you discover how important your topic is or how you can improve it. And it's important for the next steps of the process that we'll talk about. So literature review. Number two is the IRB. Sometimes if you're doing a project in an institution and it involves human subjects, you need an IRB, which is, for people who are not familiar with that, it's the Institutional Review Board, which means like the ethical approval for the project. So you need to have that. Afterwards, after your project is approved, you need to start designing your project, and you can actually start designing a project before the IRB. So you can do either, because for the IRB, you just need to give them an idea of what your project is about. So design your project. And it's like, do you know how when you're an architect, you have the design for the house and then another engineer comes and builds the house for you? This is exactly like this, because you'll be the architect of the project. If you have wrong pillars in the wrong place, the whole house would collapse. And if you don't design your project well, the whole project would go into vain afterwards. So you would build the project, collect data, and send it to the journal. And guess what? You forgot to include an extremely important factor, and now your project is rejected. And you either have to do everything from zero, or you need to collect back data. And now you're in a different institution, and like things are a mess. So that's why you need to make sure that your house is built on strong base. So that's the study design, which means which data are you going to collect? Which groups are you comparing? What is your hypothesis? What do you think the results would be? What is the knowledge gap? What is your variables or independent risk factors? And what is your outcome? For example, we're studying two medications and risk of stroke. How do you define stroke? How do you measure stroke? Is it like clinical or on MRI or CT scan? Are we collecting smoking? Well, smoking within 4 days of the event, 10 days, former smoker who smoked 20 years ago, is that person a smoker? What about diabetes, hypertension, the medication, how long, what is the dose? All these details, like people think, oh, it's easy to do this. It's not easy. You need to know like details of every single thing. So once you start collecting the data, things are clear. So you and me, if we're collecting different patients and we were working in different countries or in the same lab, we have no argument about this patient having this set of variables. So yeah,
Gotcha.
we want to do that. This is smoking, this is not smoking. Things should be very clear. So designing the project and which variables to be collected. And this could be based on multiple factors, one of which is literature review. After you design the project, you start the building process. So you start collecting the data. Could be from the charts, could be in a prospective way. So collecting the data, building the database that you have, and then we clean the data, and then we start the statistical analysis. So here, some people just send that database to a statistician and they do it for them. You will realize when you do research, that's a painful process. Why? Because you're relying on somebody else's work. These people are always overworked and they have so many projects to do. And if this is like a secret. If I was not doing my statistical analysis myself, there is no way on earth I can get 100 papers. Because I was doing my own stat. I would stay till midnight to do my own stat. A statistician will not do that for you. They will just come to your work once it's time to do your work. Like you would be listed as one of the so many projects they have. And if you're going to wait 3-4 months to get a project done, you'll not get anything done. So that's why I think having your own statistical analysis will help you understand the project more and move the ball faster. So then comes the statistical analysis. You come back with the data, you fix things, and then you start the writing process. And I think this might be one of the most challenging parts for medical students or residents, even residents, US residents, native English speakers. Because the problem I see with students or with people writing papers, it's not an English problem. It's an organization problem. That's why in my course, I have one specific lesson for each: introduction, methods, results, and discussion. And the flow of the paper, what things needs to be included is extremely important. And people want to know that, they can check out the course, because each lesson is like hour and a half. So it's very hard to summarize that now. But in summary, it's the flow, it's the ideas that need to be included. It's not the English language. And then comes you have the first draft, you send it to your mentors back and forth. Sometimes I remember one of the papers that I have, it had, I think 7, 8 authors on it. And we send it to each one and they do track changes. And you know how in track changes, you have a different color for each person. The paper is literally like a rainbow afterwards. There were comments and stuff all over the place. And it took me like days to change it and fix the stuff that they wanted to do. And then you submit to the journal. You wait 3, 4 months, you get back a response, either rejection or revision or acceptance. You send it back after if they ask you for a revised version, you go back and forth until the paper is accepted, and then it takes like few months for it to be published. So it's a lot of time. That's what people need to understand. Actual research projects, not case reports and letter to the editor and these stuff, they take a lot of time and commitment and effort. It's not easy.
That's a very detailed analysis, and thank you for letting us know about the research skills. Can you talk about statistical analysis, like the skills that requires, and all about that?
Yeah, sure. So for statistical analysis, you have to decide which program does your institution have access to. Some programs are not very expensive, so you can buy it your own, like SPSS. JUMP is actually very expensive, but it's my favorite program. JMP, it's an expensive program, but it's a really, really good program. It's very user-friendly. R is not user-friendly. If you're not like code savvy, it's going to be hard for you. So my preferred one, if your institution has access to that, is JMP. It's the best. If you don't have access to that, SPSS would be good and would do the job for you. So what are the skills that you need to know to do when you are doing statistical analysis? I would divide this into the basic stat and the advanced stat. And this is how I divide my statistics scores. There is like the beginners and the advanced. The beginner is you need to know how to summarize your data. So you have, let's say, 100 patients. You need to know how to do the mean, the median, and how to choose each. And this is another important thing that people don't think about. It's not hard to do the stat. I have a video, 10 minutes, that shows you the majority of things that you need to know for SPSS. People can check it out. The hard part is actually figuring out which test to use. I can teach you how to do suturing very easily, but the decision whether this is something that needs to be closed, do you need antibiotics, do you need surgery, do you need to go now to the surgery or wait, the decision process is the hard part about stat. Just clicking some things on the program, you can learn that in literally 10 minutes. But the decision-making process is what I teach in the course because it's extensive. When should you choose the mean? When should you choose the median? The percentages, the frequency and the count. And now you have your summary data. Now you want to compare them. How to use chi-square, how to use t-test, when you use the Fisher, which is similar to chi-square for certain situations.
Yeah.
The non-parametric version of the t-test, which is the Mann-Whitney test. And then there is the ANOVA. So this is for comparing two means and comparing two proportions. This is the main basic stat. There is the paired t-test for paired data. There is the power analysis. I would say these are the basic stuff. The continuous variables, categorical variables, how to describe them, how to do figures for them, and how to compare them. Then we jump to the more complicated statistics, which is the regression analysis. So regression, again, very simple to do. You just drop things in the model, click run, and you get the numbers. However, understanding what these things mean, how to build the best model, is the skill. Just throwing things inside the model is not easy. Understanding how these things are is the hard part. So there is the linear regression when you're having a continuous outcome. There is the logistic regression when you have the outcome. And there is the multivariable linear and logistic regression. You have multiple variables as the predictors. There is the survival analysis, which is one of my favorite, the Kaplan-Meier analysis, these curves that show you higher survival and lower survival. And I cover, I think the last lesson is the Cook's proportional hazards regression model, which gives you the hazards ratio of different
hazard ratios. Yeah, time to event data. I've been learning about that.
Time to event data. I don't cover the even more complicated analysis like propensity score analysis and the more advanced regression models. But I think as a medical student who's working on research or the majority of the research projects I work on, if you reach the Cox proportional hazards regression model, this is more than enough for you. You would be able to understand, publish in even high impact journals. Like look at JAMA surgery. This is usually in most papers the most they reach. The linear, logistic, univariate and multivariable regression, and sometimes they have the Cox. But otherwise, you would have simple comparisons in most journals.
That is a very detailed, insightful explanation of everything, and I'm so thankful for that. I've learned a lot from this. But anyways, just wanted to say thank you for coming here and giving us your time. And guys, if you guys just want to check out his channel, he has a very big channel about his life in the US and about USMLE. Please do check him out. I'll mention a link of his channel in the description and in the comments. So please do check him out. He also has a great research and a statistical course. You can check it out again. Like I'll mention the link in the description at The Match Guy. Thank you so much for taking the time to, just explain all of this to us.
Thank you so much, Mac, for having me on the channel. It's always a pleasure to talk to people about research. I feel so excited when I talk to people about research because I feel that so many people don't know the real research, real secrets about research, and it's always helpful to share that with medical students around the world.
Please like and subscribe in case you like this video. It helps a lot. And let me know in the comments, like, what do you want to watch next?